You trusted the wrong partner, and your first instinct is that you simply missed the lie. But in 9 out of 10 cases, the problem is not that you were deceived. Your problem is that you were reading the wrong thing entirely. Every wrong partnership costs you months you are not getting back, months where your momentum quietly dies. There is a specific mechanism behind why your read keeps failing, and you are about to see it. Here is what you have probably been telling yourself. You are smart enough to spot a red flag. You have been burned before, so now you pay attention. You watch how someone talks, you listen to what they say they value, you notice whether the energy feels right. And still, somehow, you end up 6 weeks deep into something that was never going to work, wondering how you missed it again. You have seen people like this before, and they have had plenty of practice. And they have been doing it longer than you realize. And you keep reading the same things, the pitch, the values they talk about, the enthusiasm in that first call. Not what they do, what they say. Does it feel like no matter how carefully you vet someone, they only show you who they really are after you have already committed your time? That is the trap. Not that you missed something, but that what you were looking for was never going to show up in what they told you. It shows up somewhere else. And until you know where to look, being smart just means you build a more confident case for the wrong conclusion. This is called correspondence bias, and psychologists at Cornell who studied it found you have no idea it's shaping your judgments. And neither do the smartest, most experienced people in any room. That is what makes this so dangerous. You cannot opt out. What it means for you is this. Your brain is wired to take what someone tells you about themselves and treat it as a direct window into who they actually are. When they say they are reliable, your brain files them under reliable. When they say they value hard work, your brain builds a model of someone who values hard work. For you, the filing happens fast, it feels rational, and it is almost always wrong. Here is what your brain is skipping. The way someone presents themselves to you is the signal they have had the most practice controlling. It is the most rehearsed version of them you will ever see. Which means everything you are reading is the version they rehearsed for you. What they cannot rehearse is how they respond when your success feels like a threat to theirs, or who gets the blame when something falls apart, or whether they do the small thing they said they would do when nobody is watching. That is your unscripted version of them. That version only surfaces after you have already paid for it. That is your warning, the version that shows up 6 weeks into a collaboration when it is already too expensive to leave. That is why you can come off a first call with a potential partner feeling completely certain about them and still be completely wrong. And you will not see it coming until it is too late. There are 3 specific tools that do exactly that, and every one of them comes from peer-reviewed research in behavioral science, not from productivity culture or gut instinct. And none of them require the other person to cooperate. The first tool is called the threat thermometer, and it comes from one of the most replicated findings in social psychology. Robert Cialdini and his colleagues published a study in 1976 in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology that documented something they called birging and corfing, basking in reflected glory and cutting off reflected failure. What they found was that people's instinctive response to someone else's success is not random, and it is not polite. It is a stable signature of how that person is wired. Some people pull toward your win because it benefits them to be associated with it. Others quietly step back because your success makes their own position feel smaller. That split happens in seconds, and most people never notice it. The response happens fast, it is hard to fake, and it tells you more about their motivational structure than any conversation about values or vision ever will. Here is what you do with it. In your next conversation with someone you are considering working with, mention a recent win, something concrete, something real. A client result, a revenue milestone, a piece of content that landed. Say it once, then stop talking. What happens in the next 30 seconds is your data. Do they ask a follow-up question? Do they immediately match you with their own win? Do they go quiet? Do they actively celebrate you without pivoting back to themselves? Write down the exact words and the tone within the hour before the social polish of the memory smooths it over. That response is your first read on whether your success feels like a resource or a threat to them. The problem is that one moment only shows you how they react to your wins. It does not show you what they do when things go wrong, and someone needs to take the blame. The second tool is called the blame attribution audit, and it reaches a layer the threat thermometer cannot touch. And that moment, the blame moment, is the one that ends partnerships. Bernard Weiner, a psychologist at UCLA, published a paper in 1985 in the Psychological Review that changed how researchers thought about predicting behavior. What he found was that people have a stable, almost automatic way of explaining why things go wrong, and that this explanation style is a more reliable predictor of how they will behave under pressure than anything they tell you they intend to do. It is not about intelligence. It is not about experience. It is about whether, when something fails, the cause lives inside them or outside them. That distinction is the difference between a reliable partner and a liability. And here is what makes it useful to you. That pattern does not change much. The person who blamed the market, the timing, the other people in 2019 is overwhelmingly likely to blame the market, the timing, and you in 2025. So in your next conversation with someone you are considering committing time to, ask them one question. Tell me about something that did not work out the way you planned recently. Then stop. Do not prompt. Do not soften it. Just listen to where the blame lands. Because what comes out unrehearsed is the only version that counts. Afterward, in a private note, score it 0 if everything they described was someone else's fault, 1 if it was mixed, 2 if they named something they would do differently. Anyone who scores 0 is a documented flight risk before you have invested a single hour. What you now have is 2 filters covering 2 different failure modes. But there is a third layer, and it is the only one built on actual behavior rather than words. The third tool is called the Consistency Gap Tracker, and it draws on behavioral research from the University of Massachusetts to do something the other tools cannot. It does not ask anything of the other person's self-awareness or honesty. This is the filter that catches everyone the other two miss. It just watches what they do. In 1991, psychologist Isaac Adjzen published what became one of the most cited papers in social psychology, and what he found is that stated intentions fall apart fastest when the stakes feel low. Not when things are hard, when things feel easy and optional. And when they fall apart, they take your timeline with them. Because that is when nobody is watching and nobody is counting. Most people never measure this gap, so they never see it coming. The gap between what someone tells you they will do and what they actually do in those quiet, low-pressure moments is a far more accurate signal of how they will behave when the pressure is real and the cost to you is high. So here is what you do. Before you commit meaningful time to any potential partner or client, give them one tiny commitment to fulfill within 72 hours. A link forwarded, a file sent, a one-line reply, something that costs them nothing. This one small ask will tell you more than any conversation. Write it down, the exact ask, the exact deadline. Then watch, not to catch them out, to collect data. One miss with an acknowledgement tells you something small. One miss with silence tells you more. 3 misses of anything tells you everything, and it cost you nothing to find out. When you apply all 3 of these tools, you are not the person who hopes anymore. You are the person who already knows, someone who reads people accurately before they cost you time, money, or trust you cannot get back. What you have now is something different. You have a framework that reads underneath the performance, and once you see that layer, you cannot unsee it. Which of the 3 signals are you going to start watching first? Drop that below. You know the thing. When you actually apply this, you are not the most suspicious person in the room. You are the most clear. You stopped outsourcing your judgment to hope. You decided that your time, your energy, and the window you have to build something real is worth protecting with something sharper than instinct. That is who you are now. Act like it.